This video covers Mobile Station with software version 3.1.12. You find that by hitting Shift and then the wrench here in the square. Then you hit the button next to MS2 information, and here you see the version number. So the functionality shown in this video might work on newer versions than this, but may not work on older. Hello and welcome to Model Train Fun. This is another video in the Mobile Station 2 series. Today we're going to look at how to configure a MFX locomotive. In order to do that, we got this small regional train, and then we got our trusted Mobile Station 2. One warning before we start is when you play around with these values and configure the train, you could render your locomotive inoperable, or it might end up behaving strangely. However, the good thing is that the decoders have a reset, such that you can reset it back to factory settings. Another warning on that though is I have seen some old decoders that couldn't revert to factory settings, and if it's a custom decoder you have installed yourself, or your friend have installed, or let's say a model train store has installed for you, then you could risk that when you reset back to the defaults, it's not to the defaults as delivered to you or you set, but rather to, let's say, an empty decoder. When we configure a locomotive using the MFX protocol, it is actually safe to do so on your main layout. The reason is that the MFX protocol ensures that we only configure the locomotive we intend to do. However, when you're doing the configuration, I would stop all the other locomotives so you don't have to divide your attention between the locomotive you are configuring and all the other locomotives. Plus, you might accidentally put in a parameter that might have the locomotive speed off or suddenly stop, and you didn't intend to, so you could have an accidental crash. I would also encourage you to find a place on your layout where you can more or less drive in a circle. So like here, I have a nice circle such that if anything happens, I would still stay on the tracks. All right, where do we find the locomotive configuration on the Mobile Station? Well, here we have the Mobile Station. Here we have the little regional train that's on the track. As you see, the symbol doesn't really look like the train, so that's definitely one thing we want to change. But we'll also look at what other parameters can we change. The configuration, you see the locomotive button here. You see there's a wrench with the locomotive. The wrench with the locomotive is actually the configuration. So we hit Shift and then we hit the locomotive button, and then we come into configure locomotive or configure loco. In here, there's a set of functions you can do. The top one here is change loco. We can use the buttons to go down, program CV. That's very advanced programming. We're not going to do that today. You can add your locomotive configuration to a card you can insert into the Mobile Station. You can also remove the locomotive from the Mobile Station, and you can reset the locomotive. Let's go to the first one, change locomotive. So we choose that one. In here you can already see a set of parameters we can change. The first one we are interested in changing was the symbol, right? So we go down by hitting the button here next to the scroll bar on the arrow down, and here's the Loco symbol. We select that one here on the left hand side and say Loco symbol. Here's the symbol we had for the locomotive. I would like a nicer symbol. Unfortunately, there's nothing that really looks like this particular train. There's only a very few set of symbols you can choose from here. So I'm just going to choose something that looks a little like. So it's kind of like this one. So I can choose this one. Now you see, you didn't see any immediate changes. You're inside a menu right now. In order to back out, you can hit the back button here, and then we can keep on hitting it till we come out. And now you see the locomotive symbol has actually changed, and to some extent it looks a little more like what we have down here. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is change the name of the locomotive. Again, we hit Shift Locomotive to get into the configure locomotive. We hit the change loco, and then we can see here we can change the name, so I hit that one there. Now we can actually change the name of the locomotive, and the way to do it is not intuitive and is a little cumbersome. Right, we don't have a nice keyboard on the mobile station, so of course there needs to be a different way. In this case here we see the character 4 is actually blinking, which means we can change that character. And how do we do that? Well, my first thought was, why don't I just turn on the knob? However, if you turn on the knob, you see the train actually drives, which is not really what we intended. So let me stop that again. So actually what we have to do is hit Shift, and then you see the symbol changes here, and then we can use the knob to change. So I want to change it to 678 instead. And if I want to go to next character or the previous characters, you see there's a couple of arrows here on the display, and if we hit the buttons next to these arrows, so the one here to the right, we'll go to next character. So maybe the 2 here I want to change to alpha or A. Let's try and do that using the keyboard. You see there's actually a symbol of a keyboard here, so we can click on this one. And this one here actually gives us the help that we can see what are the next characters. However, it does work in the same way. You always need to hit Shift. So I hit Shift, I can go forward and then count up and see the alphabet down there. I can also go backwards. And then you can see here I got the capital letters. So let me just put in an O, so that's here. So what do I do now? Because I didn't see anything change. I still just see it blink. Well, actually in order for the character to change, you have to hit Shift and then the knob. And then you see the character changed. And now you see it changed to 004. And when you're happy with your changes, you can actually hit the check mark down here, and then the changes will be sent to the locomotive. So as you saw, it reverted back to change loco. So if I hit name again, now you can see that is actually the name. The name is stored in the locomotive, so when you bring your locomotive to a different mobile station or a central station, it will tell its new name. If you do make a mistake, so let's say I was trying to edit this character here, it was a E, I tried to do something over here, it's a dot, I was unhappy about that. You can always use the back button here. So the back kind of reverts out of the menu, so if I hit that one, you see you go out, and you can actually go all the way out of the menu. We can try go in again, change loco, name, and you see I actually didn't do any changes, which is nice and which is what we wanted. The next thing we want to do is change the volume of the locomotive. We can actually do that live. So the first thing we want to do is actually turn on some sound. So I'm going to turn on the engine sound, and you can hear the engine. Now I can again go into the configure loco, and that's Shift and the locomotive button. I want to change the locomotive. Now I want to scroll down in this list, and I find the volume. I can go and change this one, and as you can see right now it's 230. I can use the plus and the minus here on the buttons and actually change it up or down. Let me just, because I want to jump a little, I want to use Shift and the knob, and then I can jump. Let me just turn it down to 200. Yeah, it's always hard to hit exactly the number you want. You see there's a check mark here. When I hit the check mark, it will actually send it to the locomotive, so let me try doing that. And you could hear that the locomotive sound actually changed. So that's the easiest way to change the locomotive volume. Now let's look at the speed settings for the locomotive. Again, we hit Shift Locomotive, so we get into Configure Locomotive. I hit Change Locomotive. If I scroll down, here's some speed functions or speed settings. Vmax is the maximum velocity, so the maximum speed. Vmin is the minimum velocity, so the minimum speed of the locomotive. Then we got the acceleration, and then we got the deceleration. So these are the 4 parameters that are easy to change on the mobile station. So if we go and change, let's say, the minimum speed here, right now it's value 4. Let me just turn it up. So I'm just going to turn it up over 60. Again, I can use the check mark to actually send it to the locomotive. So I do this. Now the locomotive is actually programmed. I go all the way out, and now I will turn the speed button. I will only do 1 click, and then you will see it will start with a much higher minimum speed than it naturally would do. So let me just make sure it focuses on the locomotive. I'm just going to do 1 click, and as you can see, it's actually going very fast right away. So now we set the minimum speed higher than it was from factory default. We actually turned it up quite a bit. And this, of course, is one of the cases where it can be difficult to control the locomotive when you mess with these parameters. However, we're going to have fun, so we're going to try another one. So I hit Shift again, locomotive, change locomotive. I'm going to go down. So the maximum speed, if I go and look at that, it's a value. It's typically a value from 0 to 255. That can be the maximum speed. There's no general rule for what a number means. You have to try it out. You saw the minimum. It's the same thing. You can set it between 0 and 255. There's no rule for what it is. Okay. Well, how about then the acceleration and deceleration? So the acceleration and deceleration work in that way that the higher the number, the slower it is. So the higher the number, here in the acceleration, you see it's 23 now. If I change that to a very high number, it will accelerate slower. I will demonstrate it on the deceleration. So the deceleration is how long does it take for it to actually stop, so actually decelerate the locomotive, right? So right now there's a value of 23. I'm just gonna turn it way up. Let's just say 79. There's a check mark again. I can hit that. The locomotive is programmed. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run the train. You can see here on the speed indicator, it's not really running too fast. The train is happily running around in a circle. And now I actually set the speed to 0. And you see it keeps on continuing. And that's because I set the deceleration up. So the deceleration is actually the higher the number, the longer it will take. So in this case, you could see it made, well, pretty much almost a round before it actually is stopping, and it's not even entirely stopped. So now it's stopped. So that's how you change the speed settings. Any other settings that's interesting? Well, let's go in again, configure logo, change Loco. Let's just go through them. Name we already looked at. Address is not really interesting because it's an MFX locomotive. If you want to, you can actually change the, let's say, the non-MFX address in here. However, since we got a fully compatible MFX system, not really that interesting. We can scroll down, the Loco symbol we tried. The Loco functions, I really never used it, but what you can do is you can actually shift the position around on the icons. And I believe the positions in the decoder if you have a need for that. Personally, I haven't found any need for that. If we go further down, here was the speed parameters, the maximum, the minimum, the acceleration, the deceleration, the volume. So we pretty much been through all the interesting functions here. Now, we've goofed up the locomotive, right? So now it took almost a full round of the locomotive before it decelerates and stopped. We did some other things. So now I truly changed a lot of parameters. It would be nice if we actually could reset all of these things, and we can. So what we do, let's just get out to the main again. So we can, well, let's first verify that the volume is still low. So just turned on the engine. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's not that loud. So let's just use that as a check for if we actually succeed in resetting the locomotive. So again, we go into configure locomotive. I hit change. Oh, no, I do not hit change locomotive. I look at some of the other things that are here. So I could change the locomotive. I can program CVs. That's very advanced. I'm not going to do that today. There is also at the bottom here, the reset locomotive. The reset locomotive will actually reset decoder, so I'll do that. It asks if you're sure. You can also see the name here is a little weird, 6780004. So I'm gonna hit yes. And now the decoder is actually reset. It's actually a very simple command to change. However, you see the name has not changed. If I turn the volume on, it is actually louder. However, the name didn't change on here, okay? So now the decoder is reset. Unfortunately, what I have found is the mobile station doesn't know what the values are now, right? So if I go back and I hit change loco, remember the deceleration, we actually set that up. See, it's set to 79, it was way lower before, it still shows 79, okay? Interesting, I go down to volume. I click on volume, you see it says 200. When it's reset, it would actually say, I believe, 230. So we don't have the correct values here in the mobile station. To me, this is actually a bug in the system, in the mobile station. However, it's easily corrected. So we just go all the way out to the configure locomotive, and we can scroll down again. And here there's remove locomotive. So we just remove it. Yes, I want to delete the locomotive. And actually, when we delete the locomotive, and it is an MFX, as this one is, it will actually come back to us, right? So here again, it was deleted. It will say, oh, I found a new locomotive out there, which was the one we actually just deleted, right? So we wait patiently while it reads all the parameters from the locomotive. And now we have it here again. Unfortunately, as you see, it completely reverted. Even the symbol, we actually liked the symbol change, but that has also been reverted now. And now you see the name here, where it was 678 before, and then it was 004, has changed. So now it's actually the correct one. If we go in to the configure logo, I go into the change loco. We go down and we look at the deceleration here, for example. You can see the value is actually reflecting what is in the decoder now, right? So we scroll down, we hit volume, and you can see the volume has changed as well. So the reset is very, very handy, and it makes it easy when you fiddle around to actually get back to the original values. However, as I did warn in the beginning, sometimes reset don't work. So usually what I do is I write down the values before I change them, so I can always get back to the correct values in case I completely goofed up or messed up the system.